Hello everyone, currently you are listening to the episode 0 of our new podcast, Rev Pill, where me and two of my other friends sit down and talk about everything from news, cultural events, politics, and everything else. This was our first recording, so we were still testing the equipment, lighting, and our group dynamic. Nevertheless, we still decided to release it because we thought that there were a lot of good moments and you get to know us a little bit better in our very unscripted territory. You can listen to or watch this podcast everywhere from Spotify, Apple Music, to YouTube. You can also support our Patreon on patreon.com/revolutionary_times and get these episodes earlier and also support our work. Nonetheless, here's the first episode. I hope you enjoy it.
When can we start drinking the beer? Oh, are we doing the thing?
We're doing the thing.
You can be the boss.
I love this. How is that gonna work when the beer finally opens?
It's gonna well, actually, this is not even like a problem. I can just do a crack and then I can just pour and it doesn't even hit the mic.
Where's your glass?
Right here.
Ah, okay.
I don't know.
Not on the table.
How expensive are those mics? Are you willing to take the risk just for aesthetics?
Not really,
I'm
no.
gonna really wait for a second.
But think how cool it would be.
This is not making any money so far, so I can't risk that.
Is everyone ready for the
Oh boy.
real shit? Okay.
3, 2, 1. Oh, beautiful.
And
Cheers.
we're on.
And we're live.
How many episodes do you think will last before someone spills all the beer?
On
All
the
around the
equipment and just like kills the whole thing. I'm giving it 2.
Episode 4, just the podcast ends because we ran out of equipment.
Yeah, we're fucked.
Depends.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers. Did something happen?
I broke the glass.
What?
Fuck!
What? The glass.
No fucking way.
I don't see it.
Oh no.
Bro, first 30
Oh my
seconds, bro.
god. Off to a
First
great
glass.
start.
For context,
Off to a great
I
start.
just moved here. This is the first time. This is the glass I took from the cupboard. This is the first time I used this fucking glass.
No.
That's
It's the first time.
Oh no. I'm so
When
sorry.
are we doing an episode about the housing crisis? 'Cause I'm really looking forward to fucking everything up.
Yeah.
We can do that with this
Oh
one.
my fucking god.
That's crazy.
I just jinxed and I heard a crack and I was like, I hope that's not what I think it is. And then I look and there's just this little.
Yeah.
It looks
Also-
like a dinosaur egg that's like ready to crack
Yeah.
and something crawls out of
These
But
it.
inside
fuckers
it's beer.
Are also made to crack.
Yeah.
Like, literally. Crack.
Should I show it to camera?
Oh yeah, go for
Done
it.
Me at the same time, I'm gonna show my bench.
We're doing 2.
Cheers. Chin chin.
Does it show?
This can be your profile picture from now on.
Okay, just imagine.
Imagine there's a crack.
Big crack.
I mean, it's
There's
the
a
most-
big crack.
It's a big crack. I'm a little scared it's just gonna like break. Right? It's there. Oh, this is terrible for the audio listeners. we broke rule number 1 of podcast, and it's like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be audio, and we have just been like,
We can
this is
cut
all
that.
visual, you know. No, but there's like some good social commentary in this, you know. What does it mean that like just like a jinx is already breaking a glass? That just shows you how capitalism purposefully puts less and less effort into its products and makes everything cheaper and shittier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even something as traditional as doing a cheers, you know,
Yeah.
jinxing a glass,
Mhm.
breaks the glass.
Yeah, this is so ironic because this is like literally the first stereotype that they have of communists, that they blame everything on capitalism. We're doing it. We're starting off with it.
Exactly.
This is capitalism's fault.
This is capitalism's fault. You know.
I mean, if it is true though, I could tell so many stories. It's not just the glasses. I came here last week. If they left me nothing, they left me nothing in the apartment. It's just the bare furniture, just a couple beds. But for example, to cook, I had to buy everything already. It's not just that it's really, really expensive to get a house. It's just that they leave you the bare minimum. So you
Yeah.
have to buy everything else for them as well. It's insane. So it's
Capitalism.
and you could say, whose fault is this? Okay, you can say blaming it on capitalism is like cliche, but you can definitely blame it on the profit motive. It's
Yeah.
just them trying to gain as much money as possible, and that also means just if you can live without a wooden spoon to cook pasta, then I'm not giving you the fucking wooden spoon
Yeah.
because you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Because I want more
The
money.
absolute bare minimum, and it keeps getting worse and worse. Where there's not even a bed, there's barely any basic necessities, right? And then of course, like, you know, the prices of rent keep going up, and they're giving you less for more money, you know, until there's eventually gonna be another housing crisis and the bubble bursts. Yeah. It's in everything. And the glass is a great metaphor for it. Is it IKEA? It looks kind of IKEA-ish. I'm not sure.
It does.
I don't want to get sued, so just purely hypothetically, it can be any other brand of cheap furniture. You know?
For legal reasons, this might be IKEA.
It just might, but not confirmed.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see why people might cringe when you hear people saying all the time this is capitalism's fault, but can you blame them? It literally is. I mean,
it's crazy that some conspiracy theories almost sound more believable than blaming it all on capitalism. But the thing is that it is all capitalism, right? When you have this system where everything just keeps being more expensive and shittier because you need to make more money for a specific class of individuals, then yeah, it ends up affecting essentially everything on the planet. Good morning, Jonathan. How was your morning?
It was pretty great, yeah. Now we're peaking with this beer at 3
almost. We are day drinking the Spanish style, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we are all basically on holidays now, right?
Yeah.
Jorge, you finished?
Yes, luckily yes.
Okay,
Finally.
very good.
But yeah, now we got some months of freedom, which is also why we started this podcast now. And you might ask yourself, why the fuck did they think about doing another podcast? Isn't there already enough podcasts? And you're absolutely right. But still, why should?
But why not just one more? Just one more lane, guys. Just one more podcast.
Like, we talk anyways, and we also drink beer anyways. Like, why not just putting up a camera?
Also, yeah. Do we introduce where we are from, more or less? We don't have to say the region, but nationality. Yeah.
Why not?
Okay. Jorge, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, if you've ever heard my name Jorge, you'll know that I actually come from Poland. Well, not really.
Jorge Polanski.
I'm from Spain. I'm from here. It's just not from the city. I came here to study 4 years ago. I come from a rural village in the middle of nowhere.
Fucking nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. In Spain, there's a lot of those, so I can say that without getting doxxed.
Exactly. I think it's
nice.
80% of Spain is just that region, you know. And then you have Madrid, Valencia, Barcelona, couple cities, you know, but the rest is desert.
Yeah,
you know?
There's a lot of people saying Spain is kind of like a donut, you know, where you get everyone on the borders, both on the outskirts, on the coast, and then there's Madrid, and that's pretty much it. Well, I'm in the meat of the donut, you know. That's where I am.
He's in the dough. He's in the best part, usually where there's the filling of the donut, you know.
Oh, that's
the
it.
circle.
Yeah,
that's where he's from. It's very metaphorical.
Yeah.
Kind of is strawberry village.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And yeah, since I already knew that I couldn't study back in my hometown because my degree wasn't there, so I thought, this is the place where I could go, and that's how I ended up here.
Jonathan, what about you?
Well, I come from a small city in Germany, and now I've been here for a few years, and I also started to study here, which is great. And yeah, that's my background basically. Now I think I'm gonna actually stay here. I don't think about going back, even though the heat wave is horrible.
Oh yeah.
But everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere.
We are dying.
Yeah.
I are dying.
We definitely are.
Denmark got to 40 degrees for the first time in its history just last week.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Bro.
Nowhere is safe.
What about you?
I am Simon. I also come from a rural part of Czech Republic, so that's not too far from Jonathan here. And yeah, I never lived in a big city until I moved here. I've been living here for a couple of years now, and that's how I met these two. And now we are comrades. Friends, comrades. What is the difference? Comrade or friend? Have we thought about it?
I like to use friend, and I never use comrade, I have to admit. I think it's just a dead word pretty much. But I guess there is a difference, because comradeship, I see it more as something that you can have with more people, which is just something that you are so basic, solidarity to someone, that you know that you have a similar destiny, that you have a similar life to someone, and that's why you get along with that person, and that's why this person deserves your basic empathy and solidarity, I guess. And the friend is something way more. It's like someone you actually like trust on a high level, that you, I don't know. It's just like, that's the difference for me, but I don't actually know the definition of comrade, I have to admit.
Okay. So comrade is can be a bit more broad, you know.
Yeah.
It's not someone that is as close to you as maybe other people, but it's still someone you can kind of trust, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Okay. Jorge, do you know anything about comrade, where it came from?
No, not really, actually. Like, do you know the etymological?
I literally looked the etymological. Damn, we're going in.
Bringing in the big words.
Bring in the big words. I looked it up right before I came here. I was like, shit, comrade.
Thankfully, someone did the
somebody.
job.
And it's actually basically what Jonathan said, right? Comrade came during the latter parts of the French Revolution, not the bourgeois capitalist one, but actually like the more working class part of the French revolutions in the mid 19th century. Think of the Paris Commune, think of the revolutions of 1848. And it was kind of like a term of solidarity with the working class, right? It was, comrade was always kind of like comradeship, as you said, was especially in like with soldiers, right? It was a term associated with someone that's maybe not as close to you, but you know that they have the same interest as you, or you are on the same level as them, and you work for the same interests at the end. So it came during revolutions. It also came during wars, and then of course it was became kind of like an official term during the Russian Revolution and the USSR, but not just limited. It was here during the Spanish Revolution as well. You know, actually, it's kind of like a combination of the Russian Tavaraichi, I think, and then camarada in Spanish. And in camarada, it has its own kind of origin with like cámara, with like the chamber, right? Yeah. It was always kind of like a political term with like a political chamber. So yeah, basically.
Interesting.
Beautiful, like a chamber companion.
Yeah, like a chamber companion.
That's beautiful. Yeah, you know, to me, I'd say that's the fundamental difference, right? It's friendship and camaraderie are have a correlation between them, but they don't have to be the same. Most times they're not really the same. What's really fundamental about camaraderie is actually having a goal in mind that you both share, and that you both spend time together, I'm guessing, in order to fulfill that goal.
Yeah.
You know, and that can imply friendship sometimes, because as you spend time together, you can develop a friendship, but it doesn't have to. And it doesn't have to, and it can still develop into a relationship that you can tell it's not friendship, but it's also pretty important, you know? It's really interesting. I don't know how you've lived through it, but I would say I can tell a pretty big difference between being a comrade to someone and being a friend to someone.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And both of them still being really nice and really meaningful in their own ways, you know?
Definitely.
I think that like capitalism on purpose kills camaraderie because, you know, I mean, we can argue that capitalism ends up commodifying all social relations, even friendship, even love, you know, dating apps, all of that. But it's really scared of camaraderie, right? That's why it takes away community from us. And it only makes sure that you have a handful of friends that you really trust. And the rest, if they are not your friend, you usually cut them out, right?
Yeah.
Because there are no spaces. Capitalism doesn't leave us any like public spaces of participation where we can actually practice being comrades. I think I see it in my own personal life where I had a lot of, and that's like a question I have for you. If you have any comrades, I had a lot of like comrades that I met throughout just like meeting people around the city, meeting, you know, in political assemblies, parties and stuff, where I knew that we are not like close, you know, we don't have a relationship where we would be a friendship, but like we have a shared interest and we could hang out and we could have this trust given to this other person, but it never really develops because there's not really that many places in public society or civil society for us to practice camaraderie, I would say.
Yeah, like first of all, I also agree with what Jorge said, basically, that I think you need both to some degree. Like you need some people that are really your friends, And later you also need spaces where you know that the people around you are, well, that you have some base trust with them, that you have things to talk about with them, and that you, well, for example, it can happen in a lot of places. I think the closest that I have to comrades right now is, I guess, in my uni, which are people, like, I spend the classes with them, I even go out with them sometimes, but like, I don't individually have with them like a friendship, you know, but still we can hang out in group, and we can, and we get along very well. So I would say that is probably like what would fit into that. And also in political spaces, like, I guess you always have the shared thing of like the base analysis that both of you share, but also here in this region especially, like, there's always a lot of cops infiltrated in
Yeah.
whatever movement, so that's kind of like making you a little paranoid.
Yeah.
But like,
So
it's
you
not that
think
deep.
camaraderie is something fragile? That's something it's really hard to maintain. Do you think?
I guess, yeah, but also it's something very strong that, like, in your neighborhood, if it's like, I don't know, you see the old people, all of them, they know each other, and they are maybe not friends, but like it's something that people just need, like, and so it always kind of, it always gets created through some way or another, like in every space where people get together. So yeah, it's something fragile, but at the same time, I feel like it's something that is always necessarily created in whatever space.
I agree, but I also have to say, I'd say if we really want to fulfill the goals we have in when we're organized and stuff, I'd say the infiltrations is something you have to count with, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, even though there's always that danger, and if things get hot and heavy, you know, if these movements that we're trying for them to get bigger start getting bigger, of course we'll start to see infiltrations. Of course we'll end up meeting someone who's actually not who they say they are, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the amount of people that you will meet and that you will be able to fight together with in order to bring things forward, I'd say it's much bigger, you know. I think that's something that I was going to say, that I think one of the correlations between friendship and camaraderie is that the trust is pretty big in both. And that when I started getting organized, that was something that felt really interesting to me, because normally I've experienced trust with people as I have gotten to know them better, you know, as how normal friendship works, right? You start spending time with that person, you get to know them better, their tastes, their takes, their view of life, and that's when you start to think, okay, this person might be someone I can trust. But with camaraderie, you do get that trust, you know, you do get that feeling that that person will act for your benefit, and that's someone you can count on. But at the same time, most times you don't have a personal, deep relationship with that person, right? And that's something that I had never experienced until I got to this, and until I got political organized. And it's, even though I get why it's fragile for some people, because there's always the danger that, you know, someone is actually a danger.
Yeah.
I'd say, okay, this is going to be a controversial take, okay?
Oh.
I think
Hold your horses.
that I think that many times the argument and all the efforts against infiltrations, I think they're kind of overdone. As in, for example, there's something that reading about, for example, the Bolsheviks last century, it was curious because a few years before the revolution, they found out that one of their members in their central committee, one of the people who were on top, was actually a Tsarist infiltrate. And so what happened was, in order to gain the trust, in order to get to the top of the central committee, that person had to be the most activist, the most
committed
member, the most committed member, had to get hundreds of people into the movement. And yeah, when it got out, this person got a couple dozen of people into prison, and that, of course, is something terrible. But when you take the whole process into consideration, that person actually, you could say that person actually had a good effect into how things developed, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that distrusting or not getting into the trust that can give you, that organizing and camaraderie can give you, just because there's a slight chance that someone might be an infiltrator, even though it exists, and of course it's real and it's dangerous, and it's something that you have to keep in mind. But I think that it's something that you have to just go with.
Yeah, just go with it. It's kind of something that just happens naturally, as you have, two opposing political forces the other one will try to get into the other. And it's kind of like how you deal with it. And you're right that I feel like a lot of times these days, like mass organizations, whether it's unions or assemblies or parties, whatever, they are so paranoid of being infiltrated that they actually make it so difficult for people to participate in these organizations. I don't know how you have it in your organizations, but in our shared, in the university space, I feel like a lot of times they are very like heavy on like being super secretive or being very scared of infiltrations, to the point where it's like we're not growing as a result of this, or we're being too focused on not being infiltrated that we don't actually like get stuff done.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. There's a lot of questions that like come up when you start to get into these spaces, and how you like, because there's no written rules, there's no handbook on how to do these things, and like kind of everyone agreed to like some base things. You can see it in every space, but like still there's a lot of things that you have to decide on your own, and it's like it's pretty hard. Like it's a lot of work you have to put into that shit for it to actually work. Like, and you can see people that's done a lot for it, and yeah, it's very crazy how much work is happening. Like, I mean, I've seen like some statistic that's actually most work in Germany which is done is like not being paid for, which makes sense because there's like care work, there's like a lot of different work, but like I know so many people who do so many things unpaid in their free time, which is considered work. Well, you can consider everything work to some degree, but like you know what I mean.
Yeah. And
yeah, especially in the city, there's a lot of people putting so much time and energy into these movements that they can actually like work, and it's something that was completely new to me when I got here.
Yeah. And
yeah, you can see the tradition here. You can see it in the neighborhoods, even in the parties in the neighborhoods when there's like the Festa Major. You can see that it has like such a tradition that the whole neighborhood has like this basic solidarity, has this basic companionship, and that's what all of these things rely on, because nobody gets paid. Like I think in all of these things, like everybody just does it for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's something beautiful, because this is where culture is being created. That is where, I don't know, it's free from what you said, the profit motive, which I think is very important that these spaces continue to exist.
Yeah, that's the thing, because you and I met on an introduction day to an organization, but still, if you remember, I'm talking to Yoni, by the way.
Yeah.
Yoni and I met in the introduction to an organization, in the introduction meeting. But if you think about it, we started hanging out. It's not like we started to meet each other during the events that this organization did. We just started hanging out because we realized that because we walked together to the metro that day, and we started realizing that we had good conversation, and that it was really fun, and then we started hanging out. Of course, our friendship was built upon politics, I'd say, on similar views, but it's not like we started hanging out and meeting because we're aiming to build onto a same goal that would come later, right? Yeah. And what Simon, I'd say, was kind of the same thing. We organized an event to which he came, but it wasn't an event that was meant to get you organized with us in any way. It was just
more cohesion,
Exactly, yeah. It was more to talk to people, to see what their opinions were on certain topics, and then, well, you two already knew each other before then, and that's how.
Well, we did, but like that's the first time we met in person as well.
Through the internet.
Oh. Yeah, we met at the same day, boys.
How about compañero?
Compañero.
Does that sound better to you? Because that doesn't sound as old, but at the same time it's more broad.
It sounds right way.
What do you think, Yoni?
Nah, I have to say, I don't know. I don't like to use it. Like it doesn't come out of me naturally, Yeah. Like, and that's something that I struggle with. I don't know. I don't even know what I use. I know what I use in German, I know what I use in Spanish, but like in English, I have no idea. But like
bro,
a colleague, a bro, yeah, bro.
Everyone's a bro.
Yeah, even girls can be bros.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I'm definitely a bro.
The gender neutral masculine term, bro.
It kind of is. Like, I've never heard anybody say cis, but could be used.
Patriarchy at work. Patriarchy at work. Why are we not using cis, boys?
Yeah. Shit.
We should just do it interchangeably, like randomly. Just like try to switch them up randomly and see what happens.
Okay, instead of calling me bro, call me cis.
Okay.
Hey sis.
That's
Hey
crazy.
sis. Hey sis.
That's insane.
How was your day?
Okay, we can start
We
there.
can start that.
Let's see how that goes. I definitely feel like the whole, like, I don't know, the importance of language, like, it's being talked about a lot in our times and everything, and maybe even like being talked about too much to some degree. But like definitely as a question of like, I don't know, how can you define something well for an analysis, or how can you I don't know, arrive to the people better? How can you put your thoughts into words in the most best way? I feel like it is still like an important. I don't know. It's important to distinguish between like these things, and I think that's why also it's pretty valid to discuss these things. But also, also it would be interesting to start to get into the topic and getting into the content of the word and what friendship is and how it well, how it affects us, how we need it, how it developed, all of these things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how often do you guys even think about that? Like, do you ever constantly, like, consciously, I don't know, ask yourselves like, who's my best friend right now? Who's my friends right now? I don't know. Are we starting a friendship right now? Like, do you
Are we
guys
in the process of becoming
Yeah.
friends, guys?
Do you guys
Are we in a friendship situationship right now?
Yeah.
What's going on? What are we?
What are we?
And that's like,
Okay, what are we? Oh yeah, I think about it a lot. But I love the kind of friendships where it just kind of happens naturally, you know? And
yeah.
I guess that like I always look at it from a more materialist lens where like friendship is not something that you just like start and now we're friends. No, it's something that you maintain, just
Yeah.
like I guess relationships and everything, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is sustained through like constantly doing things together and like being, I guess, on the same like wavelength, you could say, of like, you know,
Yeah.
you can't do everything with any person, right? Like if you meet like a fascist and you try to go to the beach with them, you're gonna fucking hate it. But if you meet someone that you like and you go to the beach with them and then you go have some drinks and you do some other activities, you build a friendship eventually through that labor, through doing activities together.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I agree with that to some degree, but I think the most important thing is like to have some shared interest or some shared
yeah.
thing. Like, it doesn't have to be politics. In our case, it was, but I feel like you can hardly disagree with people and still be their friends. Like, it happened to me with some childhood friends. Like, of course, there's like a border to it.
There's
You
a
can't-
border, yeah.
You can't invite them to everything, for example.
And also there's like, I think there's definitely like, I have liberal friends, right? I mean, we have a friend also from the university that's like quite right-wing in many cases, right? But I know that he's still a sweetheart and he's never going to hurt a fly. So, you know, I'm still his friend. But I think that it like reaches to a certain point where you have some opinions where you no longer are their friend.
To be honest, I understand it too, because like we've all been there at some point, you know.
Yeah.
And I get how this world makes you believe something, and I get how growing up in this world, which is like, I don't know, in your circumstances, in your family, with your friends who like all form your opinions at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I feel like I have some base understanding for these people, and of course, I also have my line where I say like, okay, this is something that I cannot tolerate.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't know, like I can hardly disagree with people and still like we have something else in common, and on that we can bond and that we
Yeah.
can do.
And
Yeah.
also, we should not like abandon even friends that have like some problematic opinions. Of course, there's a line, right? But we should not abandon those people. I don't think so, because at the end, through abandonment, that's exactly how they get worse and worse, right? If we isolate these people, if we tell them that they don't actually have a community with us, that we are not welcoming, they are going to run towards the other side. And if you have maybe like let's say like a conservative person, I'm not conservative, I think that it is a bad ideology to have towards the world, but if you abandon even your conservative friends completely, if you don't give them like an opportunity to talk with them, sympathize with them, and try to like get them to understand, they are going to see you as like a person that left them behind, and they're going to run towards the other side, and you just created a potential fascist or far right person through that. Now, I'm not gonna blame you for that, because I'm not gonna blame you for not wanting to hang out with that person, but I also think that we should, through our sympathy, like give a hand even towards people that don't share our opinions immediately, you know?
I'd say just adding to this topic, I'd say it's even kind of it's a good sign for people who are really into politics and who are leftists and who are really clear about their ideas to actually have friends who may not be so clear about their ideas or who may have disagreement on some stuff. I think it as what Yoni said, which I agree completely. It's understanding that the moral superiority of the left is a complete lie. We're not more intelligent than other people for believing what we do. It's just that we were lucky enough to bump into the stones that we did because of our material conditions, because of the family we grew in, because of the friends we had, because of the economic conditions and events that we were thrown upon. That made us eventually see the world as we see it. But the rest of the people also had their own conditions that made them look. It's not that like you have a nuclei inside of your body that tells you, oh, you're smart, so you're gonna believe this, or you're dumb, so you're gonna fall for right-wing propaganda. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. Right?
We are all products of our material conditions.
Exactly.
And the system.
So understanding that someone who might fall into some of the traps, that the system puts upon you, and still seeing that person actually has their own good intentions and has their own value for you going to hang out with them. As in, you actually get appreciation from that person. You actually have this trust that we're talking about, this friendship. I don't think you should surrender to that just because this person might have confusions about certain topics, Yeah. At the same time, it's hard because of course there are limits, There's some stuff that you cannot really, and it depends on each person. There's some limits that you cannot cross, right? And you also have to understand that the politics of each person also influences directly how they're going to be as a person and as a friend, right? Mm-hmm. I'd say it's something that you don't have to have like a set of guidelines for. It's just like a method, It's just something that you keep in your head, and then you act naturally as you go by. Just not have in your head. What I want to say is that just not having in your head the idea of, oh, if this person, I don't know, for example, is not centrist to the left, then I cannot hang out with this person. Then it's prohibited for me to get to know this person, because to have these kind of dogmas, that's what I think is mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and exactly what you said, like that our opinions also are created by our surroundings. I feel like friends have a very important role in that. Like Definitely. Also the family, of course, because also the family influences you on what you look for in a friend when you start to socialize with other young people. But I feel like after, your friends are like probably your number one source of opinions, of values, of what you do with your free time, basically. And so at the end of the day, like all of these memes that you see from like these finance bros who are like, no, get together with 4 smokers and you will be the 5th one. Get together with 4 millionaires and you will be the 5th one. Like it has
Don't goon. Gooning is the worst. Sorry, continue.
There were some repressed emotions there. Don't goon!
Don't goon! No gooning!
No gooning!
It's crazy. We see some finance broadcast.
Yeah.
No, but like there's some key truth there's some base truth to that. Like of course you're not gonna magically become the 5th millionaire if you just hang out with millionaires, but definitely like your friends at the end of the day will have a big influence on who you are as a person and how you will influence other people then. So at the end of the day, like it is important that we reflect also these things, like who are our friends, like who do we want to spend our time together with, like what do we want to do with our time also, of course, like that all goes together at the end of the day.
And reaching out to people that are a little lost, or like, I know a lot of people in especially my childhood that were like kind of like these not exposed kids, but maybe kids that were bullied or were kind of like left behind from the popular groups. And you see that like when you reach out to them and you become their friend, they end up like having not only more like, of course, faith in humanity, but they also end up like looking up to you a little bit. I'm not saying that you should do this out of like some egotistical reasons, but if you reach out to people who need help, they will just like be like much more sympathetic towards what you have to say. And there's so many people that are left behind from friend groups or society who end up like developing very like inhumane ideologies or politics just because they were like left behind by people.
Mm.
Many times are these kids that are bullied, that are secluded, and they end up developing a lot of these hateful ideas, not just towards their classmates, but also when you look at them, many of them end up becoming like neo-Nazis in some cases, where they develop these kinds of hateful ideologies because they see that the world completely left them behind. So I think that empathy towards people that that need help or need to be lifted a little bit ends up doing so much work. The World Cup, boys. Are you watching the World Cup?
Do we support the US?
Yes.
Do we support the US? Haven't they gotten expulsed now?
Yes, they just got eliminated.
Fuck yeah, finally. Jesus Christ.
But it's already. We talked the other day about the red card, red card controversy.
Yeah,
have you seen it?
They tried to rig it.
Even though the US is out, this is already having consequences because now, for example, England, who has gone through, there's a couple of politicians from the Labour Party that are sending letters to FIFA because there was an England player from the World Cup that got suspended with a red card as well in pretty similar conditions to the American player. And so now they're using this to send a letter to FIFA going, if you did it with the US player, then it is, in order to maintain the game equal, it's not even about England, that's what they say. It's not even about England. Just to maintain the game equal, you should do it to all players, including the England player, of course.
Yeah.
And so now they're putting pressure.
But now that would like fuck up the whole past of the games that came before. How do you even do that? Do you do the games again, or what do you do? I mean, I am in agreement, right? Like it's rigged completely, right? The US used its power over having the power that they have over FIFA because I don't know if it's the director or the CEO of FIFA, but he's a big Trump supporter, right? Also, the World Cup is partially hosted in the US. So they have some kind of like executive power, unfortunately, that makes this not equal, makes this very rigged. But at the same time, if we now go back towards some past England matches just in this World Cup, it would probably make this a whole mess of like pointing like, hey, this shouldn't have been a red card, but it was. What do we do?
If any follower of the podcast follows football as I do, they'll know that, oh my god, the football world is the most corrupt thing. It's insane. It's insane.
And the power that FIFA holds over the entire industry is insane, by the way.
And just the incapability, or not, they don't even try, I'm thinking. The lack of effort into covering it, it's insane. It's something that doesn't happen in other parts of the economy, because just the amount of money that football just moves around, it's insane. And how it is so clear what they're doing, because you've got so many cases here in Spain with the Spanish Federation president, Luis Rubiales. Did you hear about this from a few years back?
No.
There was a huge controversy because the women's Spanish team won the World Cup. Was it 2 years ago? I think 2023.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
And after the final, when they were celebrating, they were lifting the cup. This fucking dude grabbed the football, one of the players from the waist, and fucking kissed her.
Oh.
Like without her consent, and it went insane. There were huge calls, of course, for him to resign. He held a conference in front of all the rest of the Spanish football directors, saying he wouldn't resign, and everyone clapped for him. He eventually resigned, I think, like a week later, because of the
pressure,
right, outrage and pressure, right? But it was insane because then all the shit started going out, right? All the cupboards started getting open, and people started to see just he used money to get Spanish cups into Saudi Arabia. There were huge I don't know if this was confirmed. There were really big talks about how he would organize orgies in his house just with.
What is this with fucking like parasitic capitalists and rich people and just doing these weird ass orgies, man? There's some correlation between that thing.
And then even then, when they tried to find his replacement, it was a full clown show, because you usually get the replacement from there's directors from each autonomous community in Spain, right? So each one put like his program in, and there were like 3 or 4 who got directly banned because they had prior corruption cases that they had, and they couldn't put their candidature in. And it was
the whole network's corrupt. What do we do?
yeah, and they were still in charge of the autonomous like direction. It's just since this case had gotten into light, they couldn't get into like the president position because they knew that everyone was looking at them right now, you know. And it was a if you followed this case a couple years back, I'd say football is one of the clearest cases of seeing how capital corrupts everything.
And it's fucking disgusting, even like, of course, all that you said, how clear it is, but even just the concept of like owning players, right? Like under football, it's not just football, it's every competitive sport on the planet, but like the way that players get traded and the way that players are basically owned by the team and the way that teams work, right? For an outside player, a team is just like the group that usually works in a certain city and they represent the city and is patriotic and da-da-da. But inside the kind of trades that is going on, you are using these people, not as people, but as assets, right? The humans end up being assets, and you end up like making these statistics and scales on how valuable they are, or like it's like the way that we look at capital and factories or land. That's the way that they look at humans. And it happens with workers as well. But there's something about the way that football works and with how like super in-depth it is on just like, I don't know, performance of players and stuff, that you just end up treating them as just as money, right? As filth, as something immaterial, right? As a commodity at the end.
For sure.
It's weird.
Of course, workers also, like, I used to work as a salesman. And bro, you could always see all the other people on the leaderboard. You could see how much they did. You could see how much they sold, and you had the direct comparison of yourself and to the other people, basically. And they would even track the time that you go to the toilet. You know, like,
oh my god,
fucking hell,
that's crazy.
Right. Under capitalism, you end up being, you know, it's a joke we say, but you end up being a slave. You end up being not human, right? You are just a worker that works for the company, but is not actually a valuable human thing. It's just another number that you need to squeeze out as much as productivity out of and make as much of money out of that person. And if you don't do that, if you're not productive, if you're not making profit for this company, they fire you, right? And they use these kind of leaderboards as a legitimacy, as an excuse to fire you because look, you're down there, you're not competing well with all these other players. And it ends up putting you in competition with people that are just as miserable as you are and just as exploited as you are.
That's something interesting. Going a bit back to the topic of friendship, you know, how would you say you handle these types of conversations about work and about how you're actually being treated as a slave by capital? You know, how do you handle these conversations with friends? Doesn't it happen to you that you get friends, for example, coming to you like complaining about work, but you know they might not have the same ideas to you, so you go, do I just tell them the complete truth of what I think?
Yeah.
And I know that it will probably spark a political debate that might go pretty far. Do you just support them? Do you do kind of half and half? Do you have?
Oh, it's so difficult.
Do you just improvise? What do you think? What is your go-to? You know?
I try to do like an in-between, right? Where I explain what's going on and I say, yeah, that's the system. That's how it works, right? And that's like, I'm hoping that it clicks in their brain where they're like, oh, maybe that's not good, you know? I'm not telling them that it's not good. I'm just explaining to them how it works, because if they are like conservative, let's just say, they're not going to complain because I'm not actually complaining about the system. I'm just explaining how it goes. And they can't complain because there's no other explanation of how the system works, right? Even conservatives, they know exactly how the system works. They just think that it's good. So I just explain it and I hope that it clicks in their brain. Of course, yes, depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to my friends, the closest people to me, I'm very open about my views. If it's someone who I've recently met or I'm not as close to, sometimes maybe like family members, yeah, I'm a bit more careful. Yeah, exactly.
It's hard too, because even if they're really close, you know, there's a certain vocabulary to how all of this works, right? There's a certain way with which if you want to explain it fully, you have to use some words you have to use some sentences that I'm guessing people are just not going to connect to us much, right? Because our thoughts
100%.
really into the political topic, you know. It happens to me all the time. Having studied a degree that has nothing to do with politics, you know.
Yeah.
I get friends who come from their first work, from their first jobs and everything, or their first practices. No, not practices. How do you say it in English?
Internships.
Like the first internships. Thank you. In their jobs, and they'll ask me like, bro, and I really worked hard, and I'm not getting. Looks like they just wanted free job because even though I worked really hard and they appreciate it, they're not giving me the full job back. And I'm like biting my nails, like,
Yeah.
should I just what do I do? And I eventually do like what you said, right? I eventually go, yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's how the system works, right? And that's how the internship system works.
Yeah.
And that's what they want from you. Even if you had worked twice as hard, it won't change a thing.
Yeah.
But if you want to go into the full thing, you don't have to say sentences that they go, this is that I'm guessing it's perceived as unrelated, I'd say. And until you're into the pipeline, or until you're deep enough, if you just mention, I don't know, material conditions, that just doesn't connect.
What is a material and what is a condition? Like, you are already using two big words for these for people, you know.
No, yeah. I feel like sometimes it's just too annoying to start off with with this big topic that people don't even have a base agreement on your views, and like open up this whole pod. Like, sometimes it's also not what they want. They just want to, like, I don't know, complain about it.
That's another big one.
But also I feel like if people are really like down because of something like that and are really feeling bad about it, because at the end of the day you end up like you end up blaming yourself for the company not wanting you, for example, like in your example, or you end up blaming yourself for things because that's what the system does. It individualizes like the losses. Then it definitely helps when you explain to them that it's actually like a necessity. It can be like, I don't know, it can be something relieving then for the person to be like, oh, okay, well, it's not my performance, it's not how good I am, it doesn't have to do nothing with that. It's just like the company and what it's looking for and the whole logic of the system. So I feel like, yeah, you just need to know the situation, and I don't know.
The biggest thing that I see reoccurring, because I had this these conversations a lot I had with my ex-girlfriend, where she worked at a like clothes retail shop. They sell secondhand clothes, but it ends up being a private company just like any other, right? And you end up being exploited. You end up working extra hours. You end up being screwed over everywhere, right? You are a low-paid worker, and they use these kind of excuses that you are just like a nothing low-paid worker, that you are disposable. And I had these same kind of conversations because we didn't always share political views, and I had to kind of explain to her, it's a systemic thing. This is how the system works. It needs to squeeze out as much as productivity out of you while making as much of profit out of you, right? But we ran into a lot of debates about this, and what you see with a lot of people that like this, right? They are not as much familiar with capitalism, that, as you said, they end up individualizing the problem. So it's not the system, it's not, because, you cannot imagine a system so much. So you end up just like blaming the individual manager, or you end up blaming even maybe the director of the company, right? And you say they are greedy. This person is greedy. The manager is greedy. The CEO is greedy. It happens even in political circles where it's like, eat the rich. The rich, they are greedy. But it's like, yeah, but they are a product of how the system is set up. Capitalism creates these two, or it doesn't create it, but it came out of the class system, where we have these two classes, where one class has a different interest than the other class. And the class of the capital owners and the land owners is to make as much profit or as much money as possible. And that ends up affecting the rest of all society, ends up affecting, of course, the workers, but it also ends up affecting politics, civil society, everything. Right? So where you see a lot of people saying, oh, screw this company, just go to a different company, and they are, I guess, maybe going to treat you better. No, it happens everywhere. If you go, let's just consider the fashion industry, right? Or like the clothing retail industry. If you go from H&M to Zara, or from Zara to Primark, and you work in there, the conditions are going to be exactly the same. It doesn't matter if the owner of the company is different. But it doesn't matter if it's him or a different capitalist. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man or a person of color, because the interest of that class is to squeeze out as much productivity out of you and make as much money while doing it. So you run into a lot of these barriers while talking to people, I think, where they just individualize the problems onto managers or CEOs when it's a systemic question.
That's kind of the sad thing. It's kind of sad, but once you accept it, I'd say it's also really, at least for me, was healing. That's what I would say, which is that it doesn't matter how much you try, how long you try. There's a big part of what people think. What we were saying before, right? There's a big part of what people think and how their thought is going to develop that really doesn't depend on you. Just of course, friendships do have an influence, and relationships as well, and some things can change through that. But to get a big lasting change, that can get you to just take the effort and time and interest into learning about all this, because you need to spend time into analyzing how the system works in order to actually imagine a system, as you were saying before, right? The thing is, that comes with experience. Yep. You can have a lot of conversations about, you can see very clearly, and you can have a lot of conversations about how it's not the boss's thing, but it's the whole class of bosses kind of thing, Mm-hmm. But probably that person won't change their mind fully, at least, or won't take the interest into all of this until there's a breach, right? Until the crisis gets bad enough that the only possible solution has to be that. And of course there's an influence, and for example, all these conversations, there'll come a time, I don't know how they went, I don't know how her mind was, what her opinions were after all of this, but there'll come a time, as the capitalist crisis worsens in a few years, there will come a time where these conversations might get to her head,
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, and maybe you can accelerate the change by having these conversations, even if that change doesn't come until 10 years later. That was actually my case. I had a friend when I was a teenager who was pretty politicized and radicalized already, who had these conversations, and I can imagine myself, I remember myself being the social democrat, being the liberal, going, I actually don't think feminism works that way. I mean, I agree with most stuff, but there's like stuff where you have to admit there's blah blah blah,
Yeah, it goes too far.
Yeah. I remember myself like that when I was like 14, and then some years later, you go back and you think,
yeah,
fuck.
Yeah, like sadly
he was right.
Whatever. Yeah, like literally, it's that. Like, sadly, it is not enough just to speak truth to people, or what we see as our speak truth to people is not enough for them to actually see it. Like, there has to be some kind of like interest coming from them also towards this topic. So what I think, in the example of like your friend asking you for advice on their workplace situation, what I think is one of the probably best things you can do is like always to, if it helps in their situation, to tell them to unionize. And through their struggle, they will start to understand some things, because like seeing the power, for example, that you have when you connect with your workmates and actually like gain this power of being organized, I feel like that makes you understand some things way better than somebody explaining it to you with 19th century terms,
True.
Like, so that's like probably a thing that is always a good thing that you can tell your friends, but also, of course, like you want to have these discussions, because at the end of the day, it's like kind of it's really interesting. Like, where comes the point where actually convince somebody? Like, when somebody's also interested in your positions, like, how do I present them the most attractive to these people? How do I bring them across well? Because like, we ended up holding these positions because we read a lot, because we saw a lot, like, and you kind of give them all the input that you already have with like, I don't know, in 10 minutes, like it's impossible. So it's a really interesting question that we definitely also have to think about it, that we have to talk about, like, on how how can we express ourselves well? Because like that is a problem that our side has always had. Basically, I feel like I don't know, maybe not always, but like we've kind of, I don't know, in some examples I would say that we kind of lost the language. We kind of lost the examples of modern day of the system, how the system works nowadays. For example, like it is like people have different jobs nowadays than they had 100 years ago. So you can't come with some things, you cannot come anymore to the people because they will just not feel related to it, you know.
I think that we, in many cases, like, there's two extremes. We are either not radical enough and we are like focusing too much, as we said, about like individualizing the problem, and we are like, eat the rich, right? I really don't like the sentence eat the rich, because like everybody thinks if they are a middle class, they think already they're a little rich, right? Or they think that they can become rich. Rich person, relatively speaking, can be a doctor, right? Or a surgeon, or even a good lawyer, right? But they are still a worker, and they are still exploited by the system. I don't want to be too scientific about this, but I think that, like, for example, eat the rich is not only not radical enough, but it's also like not correct enough, right? But then I also think that the other extreme is being too, I guess, too old, right? Or like too USSR, or 200 years ago, 19th, 20th century, about
Too
these
rigid.
terms. Too rigid.
Not being able to connect.
Exactly.
Right?
Sometimes saying
Yeah.
like proletariat and bourgeoisie is like nobody even knows what these terms usually are, right? And I think that the best way is just to say the workers when it comes to the working class, because everybody more or less is a worker, right? Like unless you are a landlord or actual capitalist, most of us are workers and we have an interest in socialism. And the other is I like to use capitalists as of course the other side, but I also like how these days they're using oligarchs, because it already has like a negative connotation. It was originally used against the Russian oligarchs, but now everybody kind of identifies oligarchs as like the biggest parasitical, richest people on this planet. The techno-feudalists, Bezos, Musk, Warren Buffett, right? Those are like the oligarchs. They have not only power of how much capital they possess, but they have so much political power over entire states that like those are our enemies right now, right? So I like those terms. And I think that to the point where you were saying about like to what point do we convince people, I think that for all of us it was a progress, right? We didn't just snap and like this within 1 month we were where we are today. Jorge, you say yourself 10 years ago or 5 years ago you were already like a social democrat, but you still had some, let's say, right-wing ideas. And I'm sure with Jonathan as well, it was a long process to get where he is today. So we need to understand that all of our processes were very long, but at the same time there were some like conversations that we had that like changed our minds. So I think that when we are having conversations with people, we need to identify which fights can we win, right? Can we immediately make everyone acknowledge that the capitalist system is exploitative and needs to be abolished? Probably not. But if we can get a liberal towards at least some kind of social democracy where we make them acknowledge that the system as it runs freely corrupts itself and runs into crises and exploits, that's already a win, because then maybe it's not going to be us, but someone else is going to take the torch and they're going to turn them from a social democrat into something a bit more radical, or yeah.
If they're interested themselves, they can look it up and like can radicalize themselves.
And they need to have that interest themselves. True.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that, and I feel like there's definitely topics that are more winnable, I say, for us than others, because there is some contradictions that are like so big out there, like the whole climate crisis happening, for example, is just one big argument against the system, basically. So like if you know your basic facts, like you already like have a very great point that you made, you know. And in my experience, that, for example, is a good argument to use. But yeah,
climate crisis is perfect, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody feels that. Even the top 1%, even the capitalists themselves, they cannot really escape the severity of the climate crisis. The vast majority of the population cannot. So even if you have interests in the system as it is right now, you will not have interest in the system in 10 years, you know? But then it might be too late. So we need to create this correlation between the climate crisis and capitalism's endless need for resource extraction to generate profit.
Yeah,
it's really, really interesting. I don't mean to get too nerdy, but but it's really interesting what you were saying before, Simon, about how people how there's some certain conversations, right, that actually get people like a leap in their consciousness about actually change your mind into that we could say in like internet terms like get you further down the pipeline, right? That's literally one of the laws of dialectics of Marxist philosophy. That's I'm trying to explain how these kinds of things works, right? How changes work in nature and society, whatever. Literally, one of the three laws that Marx stated of how the world works is there's a huge load of like little quantitative changes in how your life works, and maybe you start seeing you hear in the news that climate change is getting worse, but you don't really interiorize it. You don't really actually, in the end, you don't really
it doesn't affect
care.
You,
yeah,
right?
It doesn't really affect you. Yeah. And then maybe you get a conversation with a friend, but it doesn't really get to the point, doesn't really affect you either. And these things keep happening. These things keep happening for a long time because of the currents that are lying underneath, right? Because of all of this crisis of capitalism is making it so that these conversations happen more often, so that these news happen more often, so that your experiences lead more often into this, until there's one day where suddenly you have a conversation with this friend, thinking with my friend from a few years back, where suddenly everything clicks, and in the span of 2 hours, you change from being a social democrat into realizing, oh my god, no party works. And maybe you're not there yet, but then you start accumulating these experiences again, until one day there'll be another huge change, and that's how you eventually get to the point, right? And it's really interesting. It's literally how it works. Yeah. So I completely agree.
Yeah. Very good. Only one thing that I would disagree with, like I agree with pretty much everything. I only disagree with the like, I don't disagree. I feel like for analysis, for example, like it is important that we distinguish between like capitalists and workers. I definitely get that. But the problem there is that like people used to really identify with the word worker, you know? Like 100 years ago, people were like literally, this was part of their identity. Now, very little. Like there's still people who identify with that, but like it's not anywhere close to where it was, you know?
That solidarity is gone.
Yeah, like in Spain more than in other states, I feel like, because in Germany, where I come from, like it's basically dead, that term, I would say, because like, I don't know, people got at that stage where they're kind of comfortable with their jobs.
Arbeiterklasse.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, I've heard the father of a friend saying that like, I don't know, they don't really even want more money, you know? They're like fine with their position, they're like fine with where they are, you know? So you can't even get them with their own interests anymore. They're just fine with their job, you know? And that is a reality that, of course, like there is still horrible jobs out there, and like most of my friends are in horrible conditions, and we have to work with that also. But like sadly, the whole contradiction within like the worker capitalist thing like is not as strong of an argument as it was, I feel like.
But we need to make it, because at the end that unites the class. We need to create some solidarity among the class, because what is the alternative?
I guess, but like there needs to be the setting, like there needs to be the people need to feel addressed. For example, when you speak to the workers, you know, if you start to speak like la la la, and they will think that you're, I don't know, that when they think that you're not talking about them, for example, like that's not something that we want, you know.
We could maybe go more specific, right? We could keep using worker, but we could also be like textile workers, industrial workers, service workers, right? I mean, this happened even during the Russian Revolution. There was not just one type of worker, right? And they needed to create this mass solidarity, especially between, and that was very difficult, between the soldiers and the workers, because the soldiers, they served the state, right?
Yeah.
And they needed to get them on the side. They had that interest because they were suffering in World War I, right? And that's how the Bolsheviks had like this big leverage. But they needed to create a solidarity between between the soldiers and the workers. They partly did that with the Soviets, right? These massive councils of workers and soldiers, but they needed to like acknowledge these specific strata of the economy and call them out specifically, but still link them towards this collective solidarity between these different strata. So it was industrial workers, but of course they were not just industrial workers. The rural population, right, which was a product of the feudalism. They also needed to get them on the side. So you needed to create a solidarity between all these different types of workers. And I think we can do that by like acknowledging that all of these people are workers and you have this class interest. But yes, you are right that you need to like acknowledge them specifically. You are a service worker, but you're still a worker and you share the same interest as someone working in an office, you know? You're still exploited. Even though that person might be getting higher pay, they are just as like it's just as prone to be fired in terms of a crisis or something like that.
I would also add two things. I agree with both things you said, but I would add two things. The first one is that I think that this will, I don't know if it will get fully, because there are some changes that will there is some stuff that makes it. It's not only economics that makes it so that people aren't really appealed with the term workers anymore, but I do think that we're still a long way from we're seeing a crisis, right? But the 2008 crisis was how long was it? 18 years ago, right? And these things, I'd say they take a pretty long time, and so we're still living off. For example, in Europe, I'd say even though we're in a crisis and people are living off worse each time, and you can already tell that people are feeling that and that frustration is really rising, there's still a lot of stuff that we're living from the time where there was actually concessions made to the working class, to a time where actually social democracy was kind of still a thing, you know. I'm thinking about, I don't know, both education, public transport, and healthcare. These are things that once you make the investment, they still hang on for some time. We're already seeing, for example, here in Barcelona with the whole public transport thing with Rodalies. I'm thinking you can tell how it's only going to get worse from here, right? Yeah. Or with healthcare or with education, you know that what we have right now is not because money is being spent now, but because it's things that we have left from 30 years ago, right? And this is only going to get worse. The tendency is going to be for it to get worse and worse and worse. And so I think that it's a problem that at least it will get a bit better as time goes by. I think in 20 years, naturally, people already see themselves more as workers and the solidarity and all that you were talking about.
My fear is
I had a second point, which I forgot, but yeah.
Just my fear is that like it is going to be those right-wing elements that are going to exploit what you just explained and get them towards like heavy nationalism, right? Heavy like fascist nationalism, where rather than having the solidarity towards the working class, they're going to have a solidarity towards the nation state, you know? And a specific idea of a nation state that of course excludes whatever minority the specific fascist party decided is not good, right? Usually these days it excludes Arabs, right? LGBTQ people, sometimes even Latinos, right? So I'm just afraid that that's gonna happen, and that's where we need to be ready to be like, oh yeah, that crisis of capitalism is gonna happen, and we are already seeing like, you know, signs of it happening, but we need to be ready, you know? We cannot just expect that the working class is going to unite and have solidarity. We need to be there to, you know, let them know that actually you share an interest with your class, and it doesn't matter if that person has dark skin or is transsexual or gay or from another side of the earth, because class goes beyond borders, you know? I
agree. Yeah. That is why we need to get organized now, and not in 20 years. We need to get organized now. If you share the ideas that we're talking about, now is the time to get organized and to get ready, so that when shit hits the fan, which is going to, then you have much more, even though it's only a grain of sand, you have much more power, much more capability, much more, you will have done a lot more, so that the organizations you're in, so that the conversations you have a much better chance of getting people pulled from heavy nationalism into working class solidarity. I also think that last century, this was also a problem that they had. I don't think this is something new. I think
they definitely had.
It's not a coincidence that nationalism,
especially
as
because
a thing, comes
nationalism,
from 200 years ago.
nationalism was much heavier 100 years ago, right? Especially when you look at the European continent and the revolutions that were happening here. I mean, hey, fascism happened here, right?
Yeah.
And that was because the nation state came out of feudal empires before then, and the nation state back then was much more fragmented. It was much easier and much more normal to hate someone even next door to you, a German hated a Frenchman hated a British, right? And it was completely normal. These days, at least, this kind of global, I guess, idea of global peace or solidarity is something that happened, especially after the end of the Cold War. So at least, like, we kind of lived through that. But as we see that they also struggled with that. But that also gives us hope that they transcended that. And when we look at revolutions and fight against fascism, it goes beyond borders, right? The partisans, whether it was Italy or Yugoslavia or the fronts here in Spain against Franco, it was international. It was not just people from Spain. It was people coming from Britain, even from the United States, right? There were the Abraham brigades, that's the word, right? The Abraham brigades, Britain, French, they were fighting side by side against fascism because it is something that transcends borders.
Just like friendship.
Just like friendship.
Yes.
We've come full circle.
Actually, that's actually an important thing. I feel like that makes you also understand like all of the nationalism a lot, because the second you start to make friends like who are more international and who share interests with you, even, you will see that that you're way closer to these people than you are to people in your own country, to some of them who don't share these things with you. I
keep saying, I'm sorry to interrupt, I keep saying this fun phrase that I've heard before. You have much more in common with a working class person from Zimbabwe than the capitalist or landlord from your own country, right? You have much more in common with that person. You share more interests with that person. You are much closer to be in their economic situation than to be in the shoes of someone from your own nationality, but who actually doesn't share your interest and is so much more richer than you.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what you share with the people from your nation state is the language, which is like very important, and a cultural basis, which is also something important. But still, like, there's a lot of niches, for example, and I don't know, like, I think there definitely that I can put you in a room with a random person who's maybe not your generation, maybe likes different cultures, and you will not know what to talk with them about. But if I put you, for example, if you like football, in front of a goal with a person whose language you don't even share, you will connect with this person more than with the person that from your own country, because at the end of the day, that's not how it works. Like, the people are not divided into these branches through these borders. Like, at the end of the day,
it's all artificial. It's all made up.
I'd even argue that right now we have even more in common with all of these people than we had 100 years ago, right? Because of how things have advanced. I'd say it's much easier right now to learn a language. It's much easier now to connect with people all around the world through the internet or through other means. It's I'd say even in the superficial stuff, like the sense of humor or some stuff, there's a lot more people that can share a lot of your interests or a lot of stuff from all around the world than 100 years ago. And so I keep saying the seeds are planted already. Once the revolution comes, it will be much easier for people to get to, even though we don't have it right now, I agree, it will be much easier for people to get to worker solidarity, I'd say, in the future than it was 100 years ago. And we did it 100 years ago. So I think the seeds are there. It's just they're not planted yet. But I'm optimistic in general.
There is no it's not natural to be racist, or it's not natural to have this competition between cultural identities. We all have these interests that are in common.
And you end up becoming friends.
That's
beautiful.
One problem that I sadly like see a lot also in these like international bubbles here in the city, because like the city is like an insane melting pot of a lot of cultures, of a lot of countries. What I see a lot is that people like to commit to the act of where they're from. Like, they perceive it already as part of their identity. And then within the group of I don't know, with people of other nations, they like to fulfill their own cliches, their own stereotypes, to go with the joke, you know. And I understand it. Like I also do it sometimes, you know. Like everybody does it.
German. Do you?
Yeah, I do. Like there is some stereotypes that like are funny and that you can play into, but like at the end of the day, I don't know. It just shows how deeply rooted these things are inside all of us, and how, I don't know, how we feel like even we have to act after certain things. I don't know, sometimes to fulfill the role within the group that we are in, a group of friends.
I'm vulnerable. I don't want to be vulnerable in front of these people. Just wait until episode 10. When we wait until episode 10 to, I don't know, talk about my love
feelings
life,
and love life.
Yeah.
Not episode 1.
Yeah, just wait a couple hours until you get to know me, you know? You haven't earned that right yet. Jeez.
Yeah. Censored, guys. Every time we talk about a sensitive topic, it's gonna be censored. It's only for the Patreons that if you go and support us on Patreon, you get Jorge's personal life and all the intimate stuff.
We should do a chapter.
We are commodifying intimacy.
Tune in. Just pay €3 and you'll see me cry.
Yeah.
I'll cry on camera.
Just €3.
That's true. I'll cry on camera.
Yeah, just the first year. Just something, guys, please. We are poor uni students here doing a podcast.
The revolution isn't going to pay itself.
Exactly.
Just do your part.
Yeah.
Let's shame people into organizing and
shame. Pay us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you, a conservative?
What, are you poor? Pull yourself up the bootstrap. Come on. Send us money.
We're ruining the podcast the last 2 minutes. Is this what's happening?
Luckily we have the power of cut. This is not a live stream.
Oh, I'm keeping it in. US.
Should we do like an...
That's the way we like it. We like it. We love it.
What the fuck?
And cut.